knowing what the ideal is and then being able to select those who are independent in a way that they're aligned with that ideal opens up a whole different relationship. But if they're just high on independence, well, you don't know who you've got over there, what kind of diversity you have operating, and is it going to serve the ideal that the company's serving? And if it's not, you haven't really done them a service. You've actually hurt them more than helped them.
Now, here's the golden question. Every founder lives in this tension. How do you both maintain control of the integrity of your product and brand and create a culture of autonomy with your team? If you found this paradox to be challenging, this conversation is for you. Hello, my friends. My name is Chad, and this is the Naked Leadership Podcast, high-stakes conversations for relentless company founders. My co-hosts and I have over 6 decades of combined experience in leadership coaching, and this podcast is where we explore it all. There's no conversation too risky. This week, Adrian, Dan, and I sit down to discuss the tension between control and autonomy. We discuss the challenges of a leader and a team that is high in control and low in autonomy. We also outline the challenges of the other side of that coin, a team that is high in levels of autonomy and low in levels of control. And we work our way towards the end of the conversation where we outline specifically how to have both high levels of healthy control in your organization and have high levels of healthy autonomy. And that is where we can really work from a place of real strength. So as a leader, if you are facing any of the following challenges with your team, you will get a ton out of this conversation. If you find yourself or others in your organization micromanaging, if you experience unaligned departments or efforts, if you're noticing repetitive mistakes, if you or your team is suffering from a lack of creativity when solving challenges, all of these challenges are remedied in this conversation. And finally, we've started a new segment of the Naked Leadership Podcast. At the end of every episode, we're having a little fun together with a segment I'm calling Hot Takes. I'm not going to say anything else about it. I want you to hear it for yourself, so stay tuned for that. Now, let's dive in. Gentlemen, Adrian and Dan, it's so good to be with you.
Yeah, good to be here.
Great to be back.
You autonomous souls, you.
That's what
I'm not
you
even
think.
I'm not even going to answer that because I don't have to.
Yeah, well, what I actually do is make you think that you're autonomous, but I'm actually controlling you through all of my mind games. And
You do edit this, so if anytime people hear the things they don't like out of my mouth, it's because Chad made me look bad.
That's right.
And what I say is pay no attention to the man with the red beard behind the curtain.
That's right. I am the great wizard. So today we're going to talk about creating an autonomous culture or a culture of autonomy. So I want you to stay close because we're going to talk about the primary challenge that most leaders talk about in this idea of creating a culture of autonomy, which is how do I maintain control of certain elements? If you think about it, I mean, obviously it sounds ridiculous. There are certain elements of your business that you want to maintain control of, like quality of service or product or integrity of your brand. And how do you go ahead?
No matter what I say, they do the same shit over and over again. I just don't know. I'm sick and tired of this crap. Then I fire that one and I bring somebody else in, and no matter how thorough I am with them, they do the same shit.
Oh.
Adrian?
Well, and then compound that with everybody wanting to work remote right now.
Oh,
shit.
All those slackers.
Can't get them to come back in the office.
Yeah, they want to get paid full time for a part-time job. That's what that means.
Yeah. This topic came up for me because I lead a conversation in a mastermind locally here for business owners. These are all really hard-driving, really brilliant business owners. And it's a place where we can come together, really talk about what's meaningful for them in the moment. And one of the members of that group brought this topic, and he was really sincere about it. And it really struck a chord with me because he was asking this question of, I'm striving to create a culture of autonomy. I want people to feel like they have ownership and are autonomous in the work that we're doing. And I just got burnt by somebody who I was really trusting, quote unquote, trusting with. And he was doing all sorts of things in the name of our company that were not consistent with what we say we're about, with our values inside the company. And it was a really rich conversation that happened after that in that group. So I wanted to bring it to our conversation here. So first off, let's get some terms. Let's get a common understanding of what we're talking about when we talk about a culture of autonomy. What is autonomy? In the Harrison that we use, the Harrison assessment, that it's a tool that we use to gauge people's enjoyment in their position and how their enjoyment in what they're doing is going to result in success in their career. One of the traits it measures is wants autonomy. So I wanted to just start the conversation there. As you guys hear the word or the phrase wants autonomy, or as we talk about a culture of autonomy, what are we talking about?
Yep. Well, wants autonomy in that context is, I think people naturally put the word autonomy with freedom, with maybe like independence. Like I'm a free agent. Like I've got choices, I've got options. there are lots of ways that people talk about it, but this kind of, freedom, I guess, is that word that just sticks out with me. I can do what I want. I've got space. It's maybe the opposite of like micromanagement. Maybe it's macro management. Like, I've got room.
Yeah.
Yeah. I define it as the principle of voluntary responsibility. So I voluntarily do the things I need to do the way I need to do them in order to accomplish what I'm committed to, right? Whatever that is. And it means I'm going to take initiative on the things that are most important to have that done. And I'm going to prioritize in a way that supports the outcome of what I'm aiming at. There's a hierarchy of concern that I voluntarily act on in order to bring about what I'm committed to.
Dang. Yeah. Adrian, you just sent us a picture, chicken scratched really quick off the fly, of this paradoxical table. And those of you that are listening, if you can imagine this, so we have a table with a vertical axis and a horizontal axis, and on the vertical is control, right? So going from the bottom up, control, and autonomy going from left to right on the horizontal, and that's divided into 4 quadrants. And if we're high on control and low on autonomy, you have dependence there. Talk about that.
Well, I'm thinking about a client right now, and her complaint is how little people do. And what's hidden behind that is how much she does. Right? So
how much she controls,
and the standards that she operates with, and how little standards that people have around her. And so therefore, like, she does all the work for them and simultaneously complains about how little they do. And there is a dependency of both parties, right? So like they have been trained to not think on their own, not to be in a like performative cycle, if you will, where it's like I try something, I'd give my best at something, I get feedback about it, I get notes about it, I get better and better and better, and you sharpen the saw. There's no process there for that. So they just wait around because they know the leader's going to do it anyway. And so they're dependent on the leader to do the work for them. The leaders also, they have created a whole system where everybody's dependent on her for coming in and saving the day. So it is this severe attachment between who's right and who's wrong, who's good and who's bad. And it's a hierarchy like that. So it's a dependent state. Everybody has their roles, even how dysfunctional they are very set in their roles.
And normally the complaint is, I can't find anybody that can live up to the standard.
Right on.
they can't do it, so I have to do it.
Uh-huh.
A sense
Yes.
of like a sense of victimhood around
Right.
people that, and I pay them, but if I didn't do this for them, they'd never get the job done.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's
Well, I'll give you the quote from yesterday's, and if you're listening to this, client, I love you. The quote from yesterday is, don't they know that I'm paying their bills?
oh,
Don't,
that
it's
must
just-
be. I've had plenty of my clients say the same thing.
Exactly. I think this is a part of like the founder's dilemma is, they are all in for the most part to this mission. And then when they're successful enough that they have the pain of success. So actually what's needed is more hands. Well, what type of hands are needed? What, it's,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
what type of thinking is needed. And they don't think about the context that with her, I was talking yesterday around, well, you've got you keep hiring Ferraris with Volkswagen engines, like people that look a certain way in your mind, but they actually don't perform. And they don't perform because you're hiring for roles and experience and not mindset. And the mindset is the engine. That's what,
Yeah.
the Ferrari can't be a Ferrari without a Ferrari engine. I'm
You're
sorry.
talking about Volkswagen kits, right? Where they build them
Sure.
and they look like a Ferrari, but they have the Volkswagen.
That's right. That's right.
I am not appreciating you guys shitting on Volkswagens. That's all I'm.
That's right. Love Volkswagens, but it's inauthentic to look like a Ferrari and run like a Volkswagen.
Right on.
God bless the
You can
four-banger.
slap a stallion emblem on there, but it doesn't change the performance. That's for
That's
sure.
right. That's right.
One thing that I would add to your quadrant on their dependence when we talk about high control, low autonomy, is managing behavior.
Right.
We're
Yes.
Yep.
spending our time managing the behavior of the people rather than
Yeah.
being interested or connected to the thinking of our people.
Right.
Yeah, or managing process. You think that, I'm just going to, I've got to make sure the process is followed.
Yes.
And people
Yeah.
become a tool. And
Right.
then they're not the right kind of tool because they just won't do it the way I would. And
That's right.
So it gets really the control and then micromanage. It's either micromanage or completely hands off, like
Right.
completely permissive. And then
Yes.
the flip comes with the harshness because it didn't get done right.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. You bring up micromanaging, Dan, and this is an interesting topic. It's come up a few times in my coaching calls very recently. Leaders telling me, when we're having the conversation about checking in with your people and having mature trust with them, meaning you trust them knowing they could betray you at any moment, so you're going to stay connected to them. You're going to check in, make sure that they have what they need, make sure the results that they say they're committed to creating are being created, all of that sort of stuff. And I've had a couple of people ask me or bring up the fear of being a micromanager.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I'm afraid of being a micromanager because I'm too controlling. Because
Yes.
it's kind of like, it's that union thing. If it doesn't work this way, well, I'll just go to the opposite. If
Right.
if
The
I'm
pendulum swing.
that's right. So if my complete permissiveness isn't working, I'm afraid of becoming a micromanager because I'm either passive or aggressive.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't think I haven't really spent the time to understand what I'm up to. Right? When
Yeah.
I say the principle of voluntary responsibility, it actually sets up, it creates a social hierarchy. Think about it. If I'm responsible for this turning out, in other words, my input, and I'm voluntarily giving myself to it, I'm going to be autonomous about it. And I'm going to make sure I create a narrative so that others, I'm going to be invitational versus controlling. I'm going to invite people into the conversation, and I'm going to know what it's going to take to do it. I'm going to know what kind of attitude is wanted and needed. I'm going to trust that if this person has the competency, which if I hired them, they ought to, and they are willing, they're answering an invitation, then I become a resource rather than an impetus.
Yeah.
Right? I become a resource to them, and they can call on me. They know what they can call on me for, and they have a good orientation about what's wanted and needed. And now they can go about their way voluntarily being responsible to produce the outcomes they said they're committed to. And that creates a hierarchy. So if they get stuck, they even know who to call. It may not be me, might be another team member who has that expertise that can help them think through what they're up to. Right? So that's a very different way of thinking about what one's up to. But if I'm in a control mindset, then I'm going to think about what I need to do to make sure they behave like you said. I'm going to try to control their behavior like an amoeba. If I put a sugar cube out here, they're going to come towards it. If I don't want them to go that direction, I put vinegar there, right? And so then I become Pavlov versus a partner. I'd rather be a partner than Pavlov.
Yeah. Get them salivating.
Go ahead,
Adrian.
Let me add a couple bars on the micromanager bit, because I hear this a lot, and it usually comes up whenever they've been unmanaging, and so that's right. They're unmanaging, and they're at a level of frustration.
That should be a book. Unmanaging dummies.
Yeah. Well, so I think two things come to mind. One is, we all have this conversation in our head, and then we have a conversation that we have externally. And I think most founders we work with are naturally very directed human beings, meaning like they direct themselves, I would say. And they might come off controlling, but the aim of it is actually direction and leadership. Like they're self-starters, right? They're full of initiative. And I think they end up not managing or unmanaging because they're so micromanaging, usually of themselves internally. Like they keep themselves like marching on a very narrow line, and then they know that that's like not useful externally because people hate that shit. So they flip to the other side externally. I think that's a lot of what I hear and what I've noticed even in myself, where it's like I run myself like a platoon in the army, and I can give up joy rather quickly and just to get out of duty, right? And I just got to get this. Yes, amen. So I can get this stuff done. So I think that's part of it. And the other part of it is that I've noticed with entrepreneurs, like most of the folks we work with, at least the top leaders are usually very entrepreneurial. We typically give others what we want. Right? So if I'm an entrepreneur and somebody's micromanaging me, that's like hell. Like, get the fuck out of here. I don't want you not know who I am? I'm going to do this. Get out of here. Just tell me what you want to get done, when you want to get it done, and leave me alone. So that most of our entrepreneurs live like that. They strive for autonomy. And so they end up giving other people that same thing, thinking that's a gift to them.
Right.
Because they treat others, golden rule, they treat others the way they like to be treated, although that might be very disconnected from what's needed in reality.
Sure.
And what's interesting is if you do that, you give somebody autonomy, they may come back and say, I need more structure. I don't know what you're talking about. Help me think of it. And you go, and then you're offended because you think, what are you talking about? I don't want to be controlled.
Let me do your job for you? Let me do your job for you? What do you...
Wait, you have questions?
I thought I'm paying you.
You need help?
Yeah.
I'm not a babysitter.
Right.
Another thing that shows up here in this dependence quadrant, I would say, is an intolerance of mistakes. Right? In any culture of autonomy, there is a margin for mistake. There has to be. Because you're allowing people, right, mistakes outside of yourself.
Right.
Meaning,
it's more of a, as I think about it, Chad, it's like a learning environment. Like, you made a mistake. But if I'm doing it for you and you fail, then I have to learn what I already know, and I'm pissed off because I already know this.
That's right.
Why aren't you learning what I'm doing?
Right. Yeah. Or even like the intention mechanism distinction comes up for me. So like even if someone can deliver the same outcomes, but does it in a quote unquote weird way, that's even, you want to micromanage and control the process if we're in this controlling mindset. right? So it's like, why is she doing it that way? That's so dumb. That's like the conversation a lot of times. Or that's taking twice as long. I mean, who knows what they might learn along the way? I'm not interested in that. I'm actually just interested. Can you just get in line? Can you just study quote unquote best practices? Can you just go do what I would do?
Oh, I hate the whole
Right
idea.
on. Right on.
Okay.
Hey, so go ahead, Dan.
Well, the other thing is the person learns to ask for what they need to do, and if you can't tell them, they're frustrated. And then if you tell them and they don't do it well, the question is, well, what thinking actually made doing that a possibility? Right? Because you do what you do because of what you see as possible. So if they don't see the possibility of the process you have in place, they really aren't. There's something in their thinking missing, and they're going to try to reinvent there's nothing worse than somebody coming try to reinvent your process before they even learn what the process is in place for. I'm all
Right.
for reinventing the process, but first learn the way us dummies over here have done it and got us to where we're at so we can hire you. And there's no doubt that there's better ways, but please learn this one first in case all your experiments don't work. You can return to this and try again, go again, right?
Right on. Yeah, we experienced that a little bit today, didn't we, Adrian?
Oh, yeah.
What's that?
We hired a vendor to help us with some of our marketing, and she's a great gal, but she's a script reader, or a script regurgitator rather.
Yep.
And she didn't take a minute to find out what our goals were.
Yeah.
And she had the script, and Adrian worked to interrupt the conversation to have a conversation about what our goals were, and I think you were speaking Chinese to her.
Oh, I wish.
That's when I realized I'm halfway through it and I'm like, what am I doing? This is not going to work. She doesn't even know what I'm talking about, let alone is she even listening. But
Sure.
even if she were listening, this is master's level stuff. And I don't mean that derogatorily. I guess I do, maybe. Sorry. But really, it's like I was realizing, what am I doing here? Just shut up, Adrian. Just sit back, enjoy the ride.
Hear what she's got to say, and then we'll do our thing.
Chad will make the bet. I'm not here to educate her. She's not paying me for a coaching contract, nor is her boss. Not yet anyway. And here we go. But yes,
how to work out.
She was. We got the insight we needed to go do what we're gonna do.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was valuable. It was great.
Good.
Yeah, but she was so on automatic, but you could tell organizations that are high control. We train people not to think. We train people not to be agile. We train people to just do this, just replicate this. And if you're going to work a volume-based business, like I'm assuming this business is volume-based, then great.
Yeah.
Just hit the bell curve and you're great.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. Thinking equals presence. I mean, if I'm there to think, I'm going to be present and bring myself to the party. And so here's a script. Go in the name of scaling. Here's your script.
Yeah, just do this. Don't freewheel it. Just read this thing.
That's right.
Don't connect. Like you can still connect and have the script.
Yeah.
Right. And the script, and that's where we're going, right? So that would be high control, low autonomy. Let's go the other direction. Let's go low control, high autonomy, which is where I think my friend in the mastermind found himself with this particular employee, where he thought he was creating something valuable, but he was letting go of a lot of the control. Let's dive into it. So low control, high autonomy. Adrian, you wrote independence.
I did.
And what I hear or what I read or what I make up, what I see when I read that is a bunch of moving parts that aren't connected. There's no through line. There's not a home base to come back to.
Right.
Yeah, that lower quadrant, just a quick edit, I might put that as codependence.
Sure.
Just dependence, but codependence, because there's a symbiotic relationship going on in that one. And then you come up here and you have independence. Yeehaw, that's really exciting.
So Dan, wait, you would change it so, well, that's going to be too complicated to
That's
talk
going.
about on this in this
Let's
conversation.
not go there. But we can play
Scratch
with it
that.
afterwards.
Let's
We
not
have
go there.
we
Let's
have a
just
new
talk about
paradigm.
it. Low control, high autonomy. So one of the life is not fair. It's what you negotiate. Let me say that one more time. Life is not fair. It's what you negotiate. Now that's an interesting thought. If that's true, it means that everything you have in life right now, the possessions, the relationships, the fitness, the mindset, are all a product of your negotiations with others and yourself. And if that's true, wouldn't you want to be very clear on how you negotiate? What's effective and what's ineffective? What your strengths are and what your blind spots are? It is, after all, producing all the results in your life. So here's the deal. We put together a 15-question quiz that you can take in 5 minutes or less and find out exactly what your negotiation style is. The results of this quiz will give you insight into your strengths and blind spots in negotiation. It will also give you insight in how you can accentuate those strengths or compensate for the blind spots. Think for just 1 second with me all of the conversations you're having in your life. Think about compensation or advancement conversations with people on your team, discussing financial decisions with a partner, or just getting your kids to get their damn shoes on so that you can leave the house. All of these conversations are negotiations. This simple yet powerful tool has the potential to reinvent the way you get what you want in every aspect of life. Go to negotiation.takenewground.com right now, or click the link in the description of this episode and find out what negotiation style you embody. You can thank us later. Now back to the show. One of the interesting things that I think happens here is there's a low attention to, once again, the thinking that's creating what's going on.
Yep.
Because there's, maybe it's well, help me understand here. So what are some,
Sure.
when we're high on autonomous, we're low on control, what are some of the tripwires that we run into?
Well, I would say it's freedom without constraint,
People go off the reservation.
right?
Yeah.
So it's the celebration of, which is usually a very, very flattering and very fantastical conversation. Like, hey, you be here. You just go, you be you. Just go do it. We're just, you be you, big boy. Go, have fun. And just do whatever you want to do. And it's like a celebration of autonomy and i.e. freedom with zero concern about, any kind of values, any kind of standard, any kind of through line, as you were saying, any kind of connection back to the whole. It's just a celebration of this person doing what they want to do. So it's kind of it's an all self-expression.
Yes.
And it's very precious in that way because there's no constraint baked into it, and that's why it's there's so many thoughts here at one time. But it's very, what do I want to say? I think this comes up culturally so much, so I'm trying to sift through it. It looks really good to act this way. I think especially generationally, I think this is one of the challenges, is that the younger and younger generations really kind of expect this. And if you're trying to manage younger, you'll come off seeming this way. And so you celebrate independent thought without like any kind of connection to the whole. And so the challenge of it, I think, which was your question, is that people end up not only just exploring past, I don't know why this analogy comes to my mind. If you leave the house and you go out past the hedge, people end up going way like 5 fields down the road, and they get so far gone that there's no pulling them back without like raining on their parade. And then you end up creating factions of thought and factions of behavior over there because they might band together and just have this whole little party over there and not be connected back to the whole. Now that sounds great unless you want to get something done.
Sure.
You know, so
unless you want your clients and customers to have a consistent experience with your brand and your people.
Right on.
I think of this like I think of this as Did you? I don't know if you guys had this experience, but I definitely did. Had friends in high school that had like the cool parents that like anything goes at their place,
Yes.
right? But
Yep.
but those are the houses
Luke
where
Venture's
like
house.
those are the houses where the overdoses happen and
Oh, yeah.
the lots of other
The police
unspeakable.
visit a lot.
Yeah.
But, I have this a little different view in here. Dare I go there philosophically? But if you think about diversity, so if you go up in that high independence, low control, you're going to have more diversity. Now, the thing about diversity is any corporation has a norm, they have a vision, they have an ideal. And when you have an ideal, you're going to have people who match the ideal, who naturally, because of what they like to do, match the ideal. And then you have people who are going to be on the fringes. They're going to tend to be more creative. They're going to tend to be more out there. And the idea is like you want to select the right diversity to come to the party, right? So if you've got a steakhouse and you've got somebody who's staunchly, let's say, a vegetarian, well, no problem. They're probably not going to want to work at the steakhouse because most staunch vegetarians I know and I respect they may even eat meat if it's necessary, but they're not going to eat meat just for the culinary value of it. And they may not like working in a steakhouse. They may not be what's going to turn them on, nor is it going to kind of be good for the business. They may not be real good at waiting on tables or wanting to wait on tables with people eating meat. Now, why I bring that up is, do they have a place? Yeah, they're going to do much better in a vegetarian restaurant. So knowing what the ideal is and then being able to select those who are independent in a way that they're aligned with that ideal opens up a whole different relationship. But if they're just high on independence, well, you don't know who you've got over there, what kind of diversity you have operating, and is it going to serve the ideal that the company's serving? And if it's not, you haven't really done them a service. You've actually hurt them more than helped them. Because trying to include them is going to affect the ideal. It'll dissipate the ideal, and they're going to feel marginalized because they're not being effective at what, even though they want to be, right? So these are real tensions that go in place, right? So that just takes it on another level, right? Is paying attention to people and what they like to do, what they care for, and being able to line it up. It's a very different thing than just setting them free out into the reservation and hoping they're going to come back with what your ideal is and then getting mad at them that they don't.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, and I think the pain of this quadrant, which I think you illuminate really well, Dan, if you keep persisting in this way, this is where, so if you've got this going on in your culture, you're probably going to talk about it as cliques, as factions. Because if there's one person that doesn't like a certain ideal, to use your lingo, if they don't like the ideal, they're probably there might be underground about it, and then they're going to start sharing about it, and then as they start sharing about it, other people are going to say, well, you know what, I don't like that either. I'm glad you brought that up. That's what I think too. Let's work.
And that'll polarize those who do like the ideal.
That's right.
Now you've got this polarization in your culture.
That's right.
Yeah, we're team. We don't like that.
That's right. Then we've got a meeting. We're gonna have a little secret meeting. We'll get together and complain about this thing.
All right, so let's talk about, with every paradox that we work with, we talk about both present, being present, having both present is a true strength. Actually, having control and a culture of autonomy is a place where we can find true strength and what we would label as success for the people for our teams and for our companies. So let's talk about for a second how Adrian, you labeled it interdependence.
Yeah.
Which I really love that word.
Yeah.
Because it signifies the independent pieces relying on each other for results.
Right. Yeah, we do rely on each other at some stage in the process, and we've got a very similar aim. Now the aim is always going to be a little bit distinct, but we have a similar aim, and I can count on Dan. I mean, just like if we use this as our team, I know when we get on a call with somebody, we've got a very similar aim about what we're there to get done. And we each everybody on our calls, we're going to have a very distinct way of getting there. Like Dan's always got a handful of questions that I wouldn't even have thought to ask, or even questions that I might not even agree with where we'd go next. And that's cool. I know that we're going to meet up later in the conversation, aligned. And, so we've got this similar aim, but there's a lots of room for self-expression, tons of room for self-expression. And like, we can be really flexible in the mechanism of how things work and how things are said. I mean, at some point, right? Like, we've got some core convictions, some core distinctions, some core values, whatever you want to call them. Those aren't going to go away. But then we've got lots of room. There's lots of gray that we actually celebrate and go ahead, have fun. But then these are the core values. So there's an interdependence. I actually need to know, I want you to know where I'm coming from, and I want to know where you're coming from. And then we've got a lot of room to roam.
Yeah.
Like that's when I say interdependence, that's really what I mean. Like I am dependent on you, but you're not controlling me.
Yes.
And that upper quadrant, that interdependent quadrant, is an invitation.
Right
it's
on.
not coercive.
Right on.
I'm not having to coerce anybody. I'm not having to threaten anybody, because we're aligned with what we're aiming at the ideal.
Yep.
And there's a confidence because we've had a communication, we've set up, and we're clear about what the hierarchy of concerns are. So we've taken the time to really play that out and make sure that our personal values are lined up with that. And then, we can be a resource for each other, right? We can depend on each other to support each other in our uniqueness to get to where we're committed to going. Like, I know I can call on you, Chad, for certain things I'm not so hot at. And same with Adrian and with Eileen and Caitlin and Aaron. There's everybody, and Mark, everybody has their own unique gift. And if we're aligned with the same ideal, then I'm gonna know who I can call in. And in fact, if I'm missing it, I want to know, because I'm lined up with the ideal. That's what's ultimately most important. So I'm going to take my best cut, and then I'm going to learn how I can adjust. When Adrian and I first started the company, I'll never forget, our first client meeting was an introduction. He wanted me to get to know the person. I was in there to sell a deal. I thought this guy was ready to go. And after we got off the call, we went, oh, maybe we should meet before we get on these calls and get clear about what the ideal is. Like, the ideal for this meeting is we know each other, and maybe something opens up for another call.
Yeah.
Right? Because it was a little choppy, and I missed the mark, and the correction was good for both of us. So that it really, interdependence is an invitation.
Right.
And if somebody resists the invitation, then that's worth investigating to find out what's missing, rather than kind of crossing your fingers, pushing them out there and hoping they're going to get it done.
I really wanted to, as we talked about this high control, high autonomy, I wanted to talk about my experience on our team, because it echoes. So if I could just toot the horn a little bit more, look how amazing we are. This is my experience on our team. There is a standard that is known in our work together, and that comes from our mission, from our core values, and it comes from the promises that we make to one another, the agreements that we have with one another. So that is the control. That's the part of where, that's the home base that I can come back to every single time if I have any question of whether or not I should make a certain decision, say something, whatever. So that's the control element of it. And then there's this beautiful experience of autonomy where it's like, shit, man, go be creative. We really don't care. Like, here's the results we're going after. We don't care how that's done, as long as it is in line with our values. And go discover, go have fun, go be creative, go, do this however you want to do it. Stay connected to us, of course. so that we can learn along the way with you, so we can be connected to your thinking, all of that sort of stuff. But it for me, this has been displayed, and like you said, Dan, like you said, if you're missing it, you want to know. I'm the same way. Like, I want to be exposed on this team, meaning I want the feedback. I want to hear the experience and all of that sort of stuff, because of the autonomy and the control that I experience, and that I also get to contribute to. And it's exciting. It gets me excited about, I am excited about my work because I get to play in both of those areas. And you know what's interesting for me is one thing that really signifies that we are at least doing some things right in this area is that I can go out and I can create in my realm of ownership. And at any moment, I can ask for help. And that is a signal to me that there is a balance somewhat between the amount of control that is here in the leadership and the amount of autonomy.
But you know, there's another value too that I know you guys have seen this, but I experienced it firsthand, is that this whole idea, this principle of voluntary responsibility, if I live that way and I'm fully, I'm autonomous and I'm aware of, but I'm connected to, interdependent, if you will, as Adrian put it, then I'm going to be sowing meaning across every aspect of my life, so that when something breaks down, like when Eon died, it was remarkable, the support that I had, and the business carried on. Like, see, that comes from the meaning that gets sown in, because we are aligned with the ideal, and we're constantly communicating. I was, it's like I was telling Eileen last night, like, well, we were gone for 2 months, and I don't feel like we missed a step. And I'm so much more connected to my kids, and the family is coming through it well, and we mourn together, etc. But it's contributed to who we are as people and to our business. I don't know how to communicate it, but it's so holistic. And we didn't cave, we didn't shatter, we didn't disappear. In fact, we got tighter, all of us. With the integration of family, personal life, and business just held up under the storm. And when stuff breaks down, if I haven't been autonomous or interdependent, then when something breaks down, rather than turn towards the team, I'm going to isolate, and I'm not enough to deal with something of that magnitude. Or if something business-wise fails, I'm going to falter in a way that if I had a team, I would have found what it would take to get the most, optimal outcome. Right? So, I mean, there's that. It's a big deal. It's for me, it's a big deal. It proved to be quite meaningful.
Yeah. Context, if you don't know what Dan's talking about, his 2.5-year-old beautiful little grandson died in January. And as he and his wife Eileen not stepped away, but pushed pause on some of the work that they were doing in the company to heal with their family, that's what Dan's talking about. And Dan, I think, just to respond to that, is there that interdependence, that knowing what our standard is, and also having autonomy around that, allows for life to happen for individuals, and the team can step in.
Yeah. They know where to step in and how to step in.
That's right.
It's like,
if you were high control, like if you were leading this team high control, low autonomy, would just shut the doors.
Yeah, I wouldn't have, this team probably wouldn't be here. Adrian wouldn't be my partner.
That's right. Yes. But if somebody else was leading it in that manner, and something happens, life happens, and you've got to shift your focus and attention to your family for a period of time.
You get devastated. You get squashed. Yeah. If it's high control. Yeah.
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 Well, it's life beyond the job description that this phrase comes
Well,
up
that's
to me,
great.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
which is
There's a book
you know,
title.
there is a certain level of commitment that can't be contained in a job description. It ought not be. It really can't be, I don't think.
Yeah.
But if as we move out of this interdependence, beautiful picture that you painted, Dan, and move towards control, then it goes back to rules and regulations and job descriptions and expectations, and we're building with Legos, and so we go towards control, which is or definitions, which are usually hiding places.
Wow.
And if you move out of this interdependent quadrant, I'm still using this image. If you're still following me, top right. And if you move down into the autonomy, then things get squishier, right? Like it's don't depend on me for anything. It's hyper-dependence or this independence, like less dependency to others, right? So I'm going to escape, and it's like everything's fluid, and but if you're actually really committed to a team and committed to a mission, then you're going to operate inside the confines of your commitments, i.e. your job description. But that's the baseline. It's like the bottom. It's not the top. It's like what everything's built on. Like, of course I'm going to deliver on these. And what else is needed? If I'm interdependent, I'm living in the what else? How else can I help? Like when people say, when they come to me with a complaint about, oh, this, Susie, she's swimming outside of her lane. And I'm like, is that your vision for the company? Is that everybody just swims in their lane? Like, is that really it? Like, she's got concerns about the other department over there, and you don't even want to hear her out because she's concerned beyond her commitments, and you want to squash that? I mean, maybe she's speaking of it in ways that aren't helpful. That's great. Why don't you train how she's communicating? But the concerns that she is, and if she's abdicating her own lane in order to go play over there, okay, good. But I'm just saying that, like being willing to have a whole view of the whole board, that's this interdependent feel. Like, okay, I do care about what's going on, like in the minutia, for other people. This is actually, I think, what everybody really wants. We're just scared to death to practice it.
Well, in closing, I just kind of, if you think about how they train special forces, the idea is they want to find out where people go under stress. Do they withdraw and become completely independent, or do they turn towards the team? And they pick the guys and gals that turn towards the team under great pressure, because they want to train that even further, because that's the way to. It's almost like there's a psychic connection when people do that. They have a sense, they have a court sense of where they are and what's wanted and needed without even having to talk about it. And that's really what I was getting at.
Yes.
When I went through this tragedy, as we gone through it, I knew you were with me. I knew, I could tell, and I didn't have to say anything. You were ahead of what my expectations were. I'll never forget. Caitlin provided her car. I get in the car. There's food in there for 5 days. It was like, wow. I hadn't even thought about it. And I know you called Adrian and set all that up, and I hadn't. We were just blown away.
Yeah. Well, but that's also Caitlin doing what we're talking about, because I didn't say, hey, make sure you get 5 days, and here's it. Actually, they like salmon poached this way, and can you make sure it says that? I didn't need to. She thought, oh, great.
She was already on.
Yes, and let me, go
right down
beyond.
A cup of coffee in the driver's seat when I got in out of the airport. I was so humbled.
Yes.
Like, that's that thing when I think about the stories I've read about special forces, how they can either any one of the 8 or 6 or whoever's in a particular
formation
that they're going in to do something.
Challenge.
Every one of them going to lead at one point or another, but they're not telling each other I'm leading. They're actually sensing when somebody's leading and how to support. They can follow our lead as needed, and they're tuned into each other that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So great. I want to extend an invitation. If you've noticed any of these conversations, any of these patterns in your organization, in your leadership, if you're listening and going, oh wow, I might be high on control, low on autonomy, or the other way, high on autonomy, low on control, there are some very specific conversation that we can have with you and that you can have with your people to start to create a more balanced approach in this paradox.
Yeah.
So if you're with us, if you're hearing it, reach out. Don't do it alone. We would love to have a conversation with you about it.
Yeah. Don't settle. My thoughts to add to that, Chad, is like if you're noticing, because if you move from interdependence towards control, is a lot of cover your ass behavior.
Uh-huh.
And if you're in independence and move towards, if you're in interdependence and move towards independence, there's a lot of apathy. Like nothing really matters here. So if you hear that, if you notice apathy or if you notice cover your ass, it's just time. You've got there's so much more possible for you. If you notice those in your, and we can help you disrupt that. So, and then and build it.
Yes. All right. Now, speaking of challenge and where do you go when you're challenged? Do you want to do something fun?
Let's do it.
Sure, let's do it.
All right. So this is a new segment of our podcast that I'm calling Hot Takes.
Hot Takes.
And that is the little jingle that happens every time I say Hot Takes.
Hot Takes.
All right. So here's the rules. Here's the rules of the game. So what brought this up for me is that I've heard multiple people say there's some topic out there, some current news or some idea or whatever, and people are like, man, I wonder what Dan would say about this, or I wonder what Adrian thinks about this. And I thought, well, it'd be pretty interesting to put them on the spot really fast and put up a topic and see what it is that they think or say about it, right? So here's how this is going to work. I've got 4 topics ready in the cannon. I'm gonna say the topic, and you guys can jump in. Whoever wants to first can jump in and give your thoughts, give your hot take on it in less than a minute. If it goes longer than a minute, I'm gonna cut you off and go on to the next topic. Great. If nobody jumps in, I'm gonna call your name and it's up to you. Ready?
Ready.
All right. Let's pause for a second. Dan, you okay?
Just mute yourself, man. If you got a cough, mute yourself.
Are you sure?
I did.
He did.
He saw me coughing and asked. That was good.
You all right?
You talked hot takes. I swallowed my tongue.
Oh, I bet. I thought you'd get concerned about the 1 minute.
No, I think that would be both of us on that one.
Okay.
I owned it.
All right. You ready?
Yep.
Here we go. TikTok ban in the United States. Yes or no, and why?
Yes.
Why?
Because it's a Chinese-owned company, and I think that we've got issues there.
Conflict of interest.
Mm-hmm.
Anything to add, Adrian?
Let me say no. I don't really have a reason why. Why should we start to restrict this? I mean, I don't know if we're supporting independence, and why should we decide which companies don't get to, or from what countries don't get to come and influence our people?
Got it. All right, next topic. Silicon Valley Bank collapse. Adrian.
My first thoughts are, wow, like I was really ignorant of how leveraged the whole bank system was. So it is a big education on my end. A lot more questions to be asking, as far as even for us as we're guiding founders.
Oh. Anything to add, Dan?
Wasn't surprised, and I've been studying the banking system for multiple years.
Got it. All right, next topic. The great IA. Let me try that again. The great AI scare taking over people's jobs.
Bullshit.
Dan.
Oh.
Go, Adrian. You jumped in.
Go. I just say bullshit. I mean, what are you gonna do? I mean, people have been complaining forever about the source of the complaint is that something else is taking over my life. You're going to either evolve or not. So if you think you're at a threat that a machine can outperform you right now, great. It's time for you to evolve. So the complaint about it is what kills me. So it's just time to go find a way to provide more value.
Great. Dan, anything to add?
Yeah, I'm with Adrian on that one completely.
Great. All right, final topic. Layoffs through email.
No. Because people are people, and if you don't have the guts to talk to them in person, you ought not be in business.
That's right. Yeah. I'm not going to say the first word I thought, but essentially it's cowardice.
Wow.
It's cowardice. So if I'll 100% agree with Dan. If you're going to let someone go or you're going to lay them off, you can act. It's the nail in the coffin. You've probably been treating like a tool for a long time, and they're not a person, right? They're just another number. So let's just send out a blanket thing and act as if that doesn't affect the culture that remains. I mean, you're striking fear into everybody because you don't matter. So if you work for a company that has done that, it's time to go because it's just a matter of time till your name's in the 2 box.
Yep, that's right. I was shocked. That one came personally from a personal story of a friend who works with a big brand. Their last round of layoffs was very public, and he received his notice in his inbox while he was on vacation with his family in Europe.
Oh, wow.
So,
Who was
that's
it? Who
fun.
was it? Oh.
Well, thanks for playing along. This has been great. Love the conversation. Love both of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Awesome.
All right. Bye-bye, everybody. Well, my friends, thank you so much for joining us for another episode of the Naked Leadership Podcast. As a heads up, every Friday we post a Cliff Notes version of that week's conversation with all the highlights in under 5 minutes. Check that out for a quick and powerful reminder of the principles discussed. I hope this conversation has been valuable to you. If it has, the greatest compliment you could pay us is sharing it with somebody who could use it. Thanks so much for listening, and until next week, bye-bye, everybody.